know about you, but we made it. All right. We have made it. And what I mean by we made it is the football season has gone by so fast. We're already in the college football national championship. We're in the last week of the regular season for NFL, and then the NFL playoffs are next week. I mean, we are rocking and rolling. We are ready to rumble with the last week of the regular season of the NFL. And guys, it just feels like we're just, it was yesterday that it was August and we were blinking and predicting, what all was going to happen. Now we're at the end of the regular season, and we're at the end of the season for college. We're at the end of the regular season and about to be in the playoffs for the NFL. Guys, welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this wonderful and cold afternoon, Thursday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris, and whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, listening on Podbean, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some NFL coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. If you're listening on there, big thank you. Share around with others and follow on there as well. X, Instagram, and Facebook. All you have to do is just type in Pigskin Frenzy. Follow, like the pages there. You'll get episode updates. You will get news and highlights from across college and NFL football. And you will get trivia questions on Instagram stories. Go and answer today's NFL question, as well as all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, NFL day today. We're going to recap Week 17, some of the top matchups there. Especially that Ravens and Dolphins game. And you're going to want to hear my thoughts on that. We're going to talk about the Lions and the Cowboys. We're going to mention the controversy that happened during the game. You already know what happens. You most likely watched it this past Saturday. We're also going to discuss the top matchups for Week 18, the last week of the regular season for the NFL, including Texans and Colts. We're covering that game Saturday, and Bills and Dolphins. We're covering that game Sunday night. Discussing who's in and who's out for the Pigskin Frenzy NFL injury report, as well as other news that happened yesterday and around the league. Guys, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Keep plugging in on Pigskin Frenzy. Leave comments down below. Guys, Podbean, Spotify, Apple, keep sharing around with others. Keep listening on there. Facebook, Podbean, Apple, Spotify, all platforms. Just keep plugging in and keep listening to Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, let's kick it off with some Week 17 action. And we're going to kick it off with Sunday Night Football's game, the Packers and the Vikings. I said that the Vikings were going to win that game, and that just started – well, that kind of ended everything for me since it was Sunday night, but it kind of just put a damper on the record for this week because, let's see, I picked the Vikings. Let's see. I was 1-3 this week. 1-3. I picked the Vikings to win. I was wrong, and the Packers won, and not only that, they won in convincing fashion. Final score, Packers 33, Vikings 10. Let's go over the stats really quick before we talk about the game. Jordan Love, 24 for 33 with 256 yards and 3 touchdowns, 2 carries with 2 yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones, 20 carries with 120 yards. Patrick Taylor Jr., 8 carries with 30 yards. A.J. Dillon, 7 carries with 27 yards. Bo Melton, 6 receptions with 105 yards and a touchdown. Jaden Reed, 6 receptions with 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tucker Kraft, 6 receptions with 48 yards. Romeo Doubs, 3 receptions with 28 yards. And the defense was a force to be reckoned with. They racked up 4 sacks and 2 turnovers. Guys, let's talk about the Vikings really quick. Jaron Hall started the game, but then was immediately replaced by Nick Mullins. Kevin O'Connell made the decision during mid-game. 5 for 10 with 67 yards and an interception. Nick Mullins, 13 for 22 with 113 yards and a touchdown, 6-yard carry. Ty Chandler, 10 carries with 40 yards, 3 receptions with 24 yards. Alexander Mattinson, 3 carries with 17 yards, 2 receptions with 13 yards. Justin Jefferson, 5 receptions with 59 yards. Johnny Mund, 4 receptions with 39 yards and a touchdown. Jordan Addison, 3 receptions with 28 yards. Josh Oliver, 17-yard reception. And the defense really just couldn't hold Green Bay's offense, but linebacker Ivan Pace Jr. was the highlight for this defense, racking up 11 total tackles. The Packers, who knew? Who knew? The first part of the season, we looked at the Packers and they were like, they're kind of questionable on is Jordan Love going to come into his own? Is the line going to hold up? And what's going on with the running game, especially with the injury woes happening with Aaron Jones. Well, it seems the Packers have arrived at the party better late than never, right? They are now 8-8. And they are ready to rock and roll. They win this week, they could very well find themselves in the playoffs next week. Jordan Love is finally coming into his own. I mean, 256 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's looking more and more like the leader of this team and more like the veteran quarterback that the Packers needed. Aaron Jones is coming back from his injury, finally starting to run the ball precisely well, 120 yards, trying to get that running game going for the Packers. The Packers could be a sleeper team. Don't count them out just yet. They're finally starting to mold. They're finally starting to come and they're on all the defensive side of things as well. I mean, 4 sacks, 2 turnovers. They're not the best on defense, but they're finally starting to find their chemistry, find their footing on that other side of the ball. The Packers are a team that is finally coming in, and they're just looking to maybe, just maybe, pull off some prizes in the playoffs. So Packers 33, Vikings 10. The Vikings, this put a damper a little bit on their playoff hopes. This is not really what they needed. Here was a loss to the Vikings, but they really couldn't move the ball at first down the field, especially with rookie quarterback Jaron Hall. I mean, and that's fine. He's a rookie quarterback. A lot of rookie quarterbacks are not going to play immediately well, and they're not going to do like a Mahomes did. They're not going to do like a Josh Allen did. All right, not like a Jalen Hurts did. They're not going to make immediate impacts for their team. Some rookie quarterbacks don't, but you would want at least to try to move the ball at least some. They couldn't really do that with Jaron Hall, so they turned back to Nick Mullins. And Nick Mullins got him to move the ball a little bit well, but it was a little bit too late. The Packers were already up, and the Packers were already holding them pretty much. So this is not what the Vikings really wanted. If they would have won, they could have had, a better shot at things. And not only that, would have had their second place in the NFC North behind the Detroit Lions, and would have had a firm shot at making it and sneaking in to the NFC playoffs. Now the Packers are taking that spot up, and it's looking like that they could make it, but it's going to be a fight, especially with the Seattle Seahawks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the New Orleans Saints, and the Atlanta Falcons, and see what they got to say about the thick of things. I really did like Ivan Pace Jr. and Josh Metellus, known as Mr. Everything, because he does play almost every slot position and skill position on the defense. That's incredible. Go and look him up and look up his story. Just incredible. He played all positions on defense so far this year, and that's incredible. He's Mr. Everything, and that is the kind of football player you need on your team. But those two were the strong suits for this defense, and I was really impressed by them Sunday night. But when you look at everything in the overall scheme of things on defense, they really just couldn't stop Jordan Love. They really couldn't stop him from moving the ball and moving the ball well. Jordan Love looked like a veteran out there. He really did. He looked like a veteran quarterback out there. Now, does he have some stuff to work on? Absolutely. He really does. It's his first season starting. But hey, give him another season and let him blend and let him gel during the offseason and during OTAs and during training camp come next July and August. And we're going to see how he does, and we're going to see if he's ready to rock and roll with the Packers next year. But I would keep on with Jordan Love. He's looking like he's finally starting to come into his own for the Packers offense. The Vikings looking like that they're having some trouble after Kirk Cousins' injury. At the quarterback spot, Josh Dobbs was doing really well for him, and that story was great, but it seems like that's coming to an end. They're Nick Mullins. They're looking like they're still kind of up in the air with Nick Mullins. Do the Vikings, if they do not make the playoffs, do they start thinking about quarterback during the draft? If since Kirk Cousins will be a free agent during the offseason, do the Vikings start thinking about quarterback during the draft? That's another thought that I had during the game covering it Sunday night. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the Vikings. We'll see what happens with the Packers. With the Packers looking like they're coming into their own late. Vikings didn't need that loss. They're looking like they are dipping a little bit. Final score, 33-10. Packers defeat the Vikings in a epic showdown of rivals in the NFC North of Sunday night football. Let's move on, and let's talk about the Buccaneers and the Saints. I covered that game at noon Eastern, double screened it along with the Dolphins and the Ravens. We're going to talk about that later on. But the Saints and the Buccaneers, I said the Buccaneers were going to win and take claim and win the NFC South. Now we got a whole big mix-up on our hands, folks, because I got that game wrong too. Final score, Saints 23, Buccaneers 13. I said that Derek Carr needed to have a spectacular game to beat this team and to try to mix things up in the NFC South race. Well, Derek Carr, he may have not had a mind-blowing game like, you know how in college when they have their Heisman games, he may not have one of those, but he had a well enough game to give them the win, and their defense played well enough to get them the win as well. 24 for 32 with 197 yards and 2 touchdowns was Derek Carr. Taysom Hill was 1 for 2 with 11 yards, 2 receptions with 30 yards, and a touchdown. Excuse me, guys. That was very unprofessional of me. I was clearing my throat. My bad. Need to talk here. Jamal Williams, 19 carries with 58 yards, 4 receptions with 13 yards. Alvin Kamara, 10 carries with 45 yards. Juwan Johnson, 8 receptions with 90 yards and a touchdown. Chris Olave, 3 receptions with 26 yards. Rashid Shaheed, 2 receptions with 14 yards, and Foster Moreau, 13-yard reception. And the defense racked up 4 turnovers and played very tough throughout the game. Linebacker Pete Werner and defensive back Jonathan Abram were the highlights for this New Orleans defense. And Werner racked up 9 total tackles, and Abram racked up 5 tackles and an interception. Let's go with the Buccaneers really quick. The Baker Mayfield, 22 for 33 with 309 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Sorry, guys. I'm still trying to get over this mess in my throat. I'm clearing my throat. I'm not trying to sound unprofessional, but my apologies. Let's continue on. Rachaad White, 11 carries with 42 yards, 4 receptions with 24 yards. Chase Edmonds, 3 carries with 16 yards, 5 receptions with 40 yards. Trey Palmer, 4 receptions with 84 yards and a touchdown. Chris Godwin, 3 receptions with 81 yards and a touchdown. Mike Evans had 3 receptions with 70 yards. And linebacker Levante David was the highlight on defense with 11 total tackles. Guys, when you look at the Saints, and before... When you look at the Saints beforehand, the Buccaneers were in firm control of this division. They were winning ball games, and they were looking pretty solid. They beat up the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple of weeks back pretty good. They played the Saints, and the Saints, after that loss with the Rams, kind of fired him up a little bit. They played lights out on defense. They were pressuring Baker Mayfield throughout, and Baker Mayfield caused 2 of those 4 turnovers that they had. They had 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions, and they were pressuring Mayfield a lot, and they were pressuring up front a lot, and that Saints defensive line played really well. That's what I was surprised about, and that's what I was kind of my main focus was for the Saints. They played extremely well on defense, and I think that's what they kind of needed to cause a little bit of chaos in this division. Baker Mayfield, he did not play bad, but he could have played a little bit better. He could have, the Buccaneers on the front side of things could have helped him out a little bit to play a little bit better, but he didn't play all that bad. He just really didn't have a lot of time to make accurate decisions and accurate passes because he was getting pressured by the Saints defense. Rachaad White, he played good, but it was just one of those things where I think if they would have ran the ball a little bit more and balanced it out a little bit more, they could have also made it a little bit closer against the Saints. Now, my only thing for the New Orleans Saints was this, running the football. I am concerned. I am kind of curious, not really concerned, but curious about them running the football. They have 2 solid running backs in Alvin Kamara for one, and Jamal Williams, and they could run I think they could run the ball just a tiny bit better than what they do. They've been putting up more yards than what they've been putting up. I think if they ran the ball a little bit more and balanced it out with Derek Carr throwing the football with Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed, even Michael Thomas, guys, they could be a well-oiled machine on offense, especially with the backs that they got on the ground. So I think running the ball a little bit for me, for the Saints, is one of those things where I would want to see more of. But the defense played well. Derek Carr played okay enough to get them the win, and they threw a wrench in the NFC South. The Saints look good on the defensive side of things. They look decent on offense. They look better on defense than they did on the offense. But the Saints, didn't play all that bad, and they got them the win against a pretty solid Buccaneers team that was really on its way to claiming an NFC South championship, another NFC South championship to be exact. The Buccaneers, back to the drawing board. They got to win Sunday. There is no doubt about that in my mind. They have to win because if they lose, Sunday's game that I'm covering between the Falcons and the Saints decides who wins. The Buccaneers and the Panthers are playing Sunday. The Panthers are completely out of it. But if the Buccaneers win, all I got to do is win. If the Buccaneers win, they are the NFC South champions. If the Panthers somehow upset the Buccaneers, which it's kind of hard to see happening, but if they do, it leaves the door open for the Saints and even the Falcons to win the South and even join maybe in that fourth seed in the NFC playoffs next week. So the Falcons could pull a surprise here. The Saints could pull a surprise here. So it's one of those things where you look at it, but the NFC South is kind of like in a deciding mode here. 3 teams in it, all coming down to the wire. So we're going to see what happens there. Excuse me. Unprofessional in me again. I apologize. We're going to see what happens here, and we're going to see what happens in this game. Final score was 23-13. Saints defeat the Buccaneers, and nothing really much else to say. That the Buccaneers have to win Sunday. The Saints also have to win Sunday, as well as the Falcons. I mean, if the Buccaneers and the Saints and the Falcons have to root for the Panthers to beat the Buccaneers, so they can try to, root each other on and try to beat each other in Sunday's matchup. So everybody's just got to win, and one's got to lose. So the NFC South, kind of a tight race here, and it will all be decided on Sunday. Now let's move on to rewind the day a little bit back to Saturday. The Cowboys and the Lions, the special edition right before New Year's, December 30th. Cowboys and Lions played, and it was a controversial end to a pretty tight game. It was in Dallas. Dallas is 15 straight at home. Make that 16 straight. I thought the Lions were going to win this game. I was wrong. Final score, Cowboys 20, Lions 19. And it was a pretty impressive performance for that Dallas offense, especially CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott, 26 for 38 with 345 yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception, 2 carries with 5 yards. Tony Pollard, they were trying to get him more touches, but they underachieved a little bit. They got him close to 20 touches, but it was 16 carries with 49 yards for Tony Pollard. CeeDee Lamb was the highlight overall in this game. 13 receptions with 227 yards and a touchdown, 5-yard carry. 227 yards, 13 receptions, and a touchdown. Unbelievable day for CeeDee Lamb. They couldn't stop him on the field. That was the main part. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Brandon Cooks, 5 receptions with 60 yards and a touchdown. Jake Ferguson, 4 receptions with 33 yards. Deuce Vaughn, 10-yard reception, the rookie out of Kansas State. And safety Donovan Wilson was the highlight for this defense. He notched 11 total tackles and a jump ball interception. He jumped right in front of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff, 19 for 34 with 271 yards and a touchdown with 2 interceptions for the Lions. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, their linebacker, came in for a passing play, a trickery play, 31-yard pass and 1 tackle for Jalen Reeves-Maybin. What a trickery play that they did with 31-yard pass for Reeves-Maybin. David Montgomery, 14 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, 15 carries for 43 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 receptions with 90 yards and a touchdown and an 11-yard carry. Sam Laporta, 7 receptions with 84 yards. Jamison Williams, 2 receptions with 69 yards. Khalil Dorsey, 31-yard reception. Josh Reynolds, a 13-yard reception. And defensive back Cameron Sutton was the highlight for this Lions defense with 10 tackles. Now, those were the stats. That's what happened during the game. Let's break down the game itself and my analysis of the game. It just seemed like early on the Cowboys were kind of running away with it. Then the Lions kind of stepped back up in the second half and then ended up making it a closer game. They really could not, and let's talk about the Cowboys for a little bit and how good they were on offense. They really could not stop CeeDee Lamb. The Lions did not have an answer for CeeDee Lamb. Even though Cam Sutton played really good on the defensive side of things and for the secondary, they really could not guard CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb was I mean, the force to be reckoned with. 237 yards. He played lights out, and they had no answer for him in that game whatsoever. The Cowboys on defense, I mean, look at what they did on defense. Look at what Donovan Wilson did. I mean, 11 total tackles and an interception. They picked the ball off, 2 jump pass interceptions by the secondary, one jumping in front of David Montgomery, one jumping in front of Amon-Ra St. Brown. The defense looked, I mean, they looked pretty salty. They looked pretty solid, and the Lions really couldn't get anything going on offense in the first half. Now, in the second half, they blended it in a little bit more. They ran the ball a little bit more. They mixed it up with Montgomery and Gibbs, and they both touched the ball. They both ran the ball. Not great, but they ran the ball good enough to get into the end zone and to keep them in the game. And the Lions looked good in the second half. The controversial call that happened was at the end of the game because the Cowboys hadn't won. All they needed to do was to run the clock out, and they ended up kind of throwing it, stopping the clock. And I was like, what are you doing? If you ran the ball or ran short, do a short split pass, keep the ball in bounds, the clock would have just gone down to at least 30 seconds, and the Lions would have had 30 seconds instead of a minute 40 to go down the field and score. The Lions have a top 3 offense in the NFL, or top 5 offense at least in the NFL, and you're going to give them time to come back, go down the field and try to score and win the game. Now, that was my only issue with the Cowboys. The Cowboys got to work on that a little bit and work on time management a little bit in that regard. Now, when they went down the field, they scored. They scored a touchdown. It was 19-20. And the Lions were going to go for 2. I kept saying to myself, go for the PAT and go into overtime. They went for the 2-point conversion, and they got it. But hold on, wait. They ended up getting a flag for an ineligible man down the field. And it was an O-lineman, ineligible player in the end zone. Offensive lineman Taylor Dicker was not eligible to catch the pass for the 2-point conversion, and the Lions 21-20 turned into the Cowboys 20 and Lions 19. They kept going for it, and they kept trying to just, they kept trying to go for it. They kept, trying to make it. They missed it again, flag on the Cowboys, and they went for it again, and then the Cowboys stopped them. Lions went for the offensive onside kick. Lions did not get the onside kick. Cowboys need it, and the Cowboys won. Now, that was the game. They got their 16th straight win. The Cowboys are undefeated at home this season, and they are a hard team to play at home. So, the controversial call that happened was the illegal man downfield with Taylor Dicker, illegal man in the end zone, ineligible player in the end zone for Taylor Dicker. Now, what you got to do is you have to report to the refs that, hey, we're using him for a play. He's going to be an eligible player. We're going to line him up at tight end. And according to head coach Dan Campbell, according to guard Taylor Dicker, and according to quarterback Jared Goff, they did report to the refs that he was an eligible player for that 2-point conversion, and the refs missed it. Now, the Lions reported the officiating crew and reported them into the league, and it's looking like that officiating crew will miss the entirety of the 2024 NFL playoffs. Now, it's not a totally for sure thing, but I read about it per The Athletic. As far as I know, I think it was from The Athletic that they wrote that the entire team, or the entire officiating crew, was going to miss the 2024 NFL playoffs. And after that ruling and that controversy, the NFL sent out a memo to all 32 NFL teams following that drama on reporting reporting a lineman or whoever, to make them eligible and report them to the officiating crew following that controversial call. Now, my thoughts on that call was if he did report the game, then the refs robbed him, and the Lions should have won the game, and it should have been 21-20, and the Cowboys would have not been undefeated at home anymore. But if it looked like he wasn't reported, then the Cowboys won the game, and there's nothing else to say. My honest thoughts that it's looking like the Lions got robbed just a tiny bit in this football game. And It looked like from the video that they were reporting that Taylor Dicker was an eligible player, and they threw the flag anyway. Calls like this are kind of hard to miss. They're not really hard to miss. I mean, they're not really hard to miss it per se. It's one of those things that you got to pay attention to and you got to report right on and not get wrong on. You got to be very careful with those calls either way on how you do it. Listen, the refs get a lot of flack. They get a lot of flack from me sometimes too on basic stuff, but calls like this are hard to call. So I understand the refs, so to speak, missing calls. I understand the refs getting some calls like this wrong. So I understand completely. I understand what happened. I understand, everything, right? I understand. But some calls like this, you have to really be in depth with, you have to pay attention to, and you got to kind of try to nail it down on the head. It's kind of hard to be a ref, man. It really is. That's my thoughts on the call. That's my thoughts on the controversy. That's just kind of hard to be a ref. Excuse me again. See, I'm trying to clear my throat. I'm trying to get over this stuff. My throat right now is okay after I cleared it hard, but just trying to get over some stuff. So I apologize once again for being unprofessional. That was my fault. Sorry. But when you look at that game and when we look at the controversy with the Lions and the Cowboys, it's kind of hard to make those calls, right? And it's kind of hard to be a ref. But at the same time, the refs should get flack for basic calls. So that's just my honest thoughts on the game. So final score, Cowboys 20, Lions 19. Nothing you can do about it now. Cowboys win. Lions go back to the drawing board. They're both in. They both are in the playoffs. The NFC East will be decided as well. Cowboys and Eagles. The Eagles did not really help themselves out in that race after losing to the Cardinals. So we will see what happens Sunday with the Cowboys and the Eagles and see who wins that game. See who wins that division Sunday. And for the Lions, they already clinched the NFC North. The North's already sewn up. They're just going to get ready for the NFC playoffs next week. So Lions 19, Cowboys 20. Cowboys got a good win over the Lions. Both teams are already in the playoffs. So we'll see them next week in the NFC playoffs. So let's talk about the last game before we talk about other news in the Pigskin Frenzy NFL injury report. Ravens and Dolphins. Oh, man. Thought that game was going to be a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I picked the Ravens. This is the only game I really got right. The Ravens won in dominating fashion. I did not see this coming at all. I was watching it. I was covering it, and I was like, oh, my goodness. That is a hungry football team right there. Final score, Ravens 56, Dolphins 19. You could almost hear a pin drop. I don't know if you heard that, but that was me dropping my pen on my desk. Ravens 56, Dolphins 19. The game wasn't even close. It was the battle for the number 1 seed, need I remind you. Now the Dolphins are in a battle for the number 2 seed in the AFC East Sunday with the Bills after this loss. Everything kind of just gets shaken up in the NFL with one loss. So it's just crazy. The Ravens 56, Dolphins 19. The Ravens not only clinched the AFC North, but they have clinched, not only have clinched the AFC North, but they have clinched the AFC number 1 seed. They are the number 1 seed in the AFC. They will not be playing next week. They'll be playing Saturday, and then they will have a bye week next week, and we will see them Saturday and then in 2 weeks when they play the lowest remaining seed in the AFC. So Ravens 56, Dolphins 19. Lamar Jackson, lock him down for MVP, ladies and gentlemen, because he had a monster game against the Dolphins defense, which is a pretty stingy defense. Need I remind you, 18 for 21 with 321 yards and 5 touchdowns, 6 carries with 35 yards. Tyler Huntley, 19-yard touchdown pass. He came in late. Gus Edwards, 16 carries with 68 yards and a touchdown. Justice Hill, 3 carries with 48 yards, 5 receptions with 64 yards and a touchdown. Melvin Gordon, 6 carries with 10 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers had an amazing game. The rookie wide receiver, 3 receptions with 106 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Bateman, 4 receptions with 54 yards. You think I'm done? I'm not done. Isaiah Likely, 2 receptions with 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. Odell Beckham, a 33-yard reception, and he looked like the old Odell with an amazing one-handed grab. Charlie Collar, 19-yard touchdown reception from Tyler Huntley. Nelson Aguilar, 2 receptions with 18 yards. Patrick Ricard, 4-yard touchdown reception, the fullback getting it done there. The defense racked up 3 sacks and 3 turnovers against the Dolphins. Safety Geno Stone notched 8 total tackles and an interception. Let's go with the Dolphins really quick. Tua Tagovailoa, 22 for 38 with 237 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. 2 carries with 14 yards. Devon Achane, 14 carries with 107 yards. Achane did not have a bad game. He played with his heart and with his soul, but just couldn't get it done overall with his team. 4 receptions with 30 yards and a touchdown. Jeff Wilson Jr., 3 carries with 21 yards, 3 receptions with 13 yards. Chris Brooks, 4 carries with 12 yards. Tyreek Hill, 6 receptions with 76 yards. We're going to have some Tyreek Hill news in here in a little bit. Durham Smythe, 3 receptions with 54 yards. Cedric Wilson Jr., 2 receptions with 27 yards and a touchdown. Alec Ingold, their other running back, 18-yard reception. And safety Deshaun Elliott was the main factor for this defense with 10 total tackles. At first, the Dolphins were getting stuff going on offense. They were trying to get the flow going on offense, but the Ravens shut it down really quick in the first, and then the Ravens offense came out. The Ravens offense came out, and they ran the ball extremely well. And what I mean extremely well, you're going to think, oh, they got only 10 yards there. He only got 61 yards I'm trying to think who it was for the Ravens. It was Gus Edwards got 68 yards. Justice Hill got 48 yards, and Melvin Gordon got 10 yards. That's what it was on my notes. My apologies. But they were low yardage, but it adds up in the total yards, all right? Because Lamar Jackson also ran the football. They ran it and ran it and ran it, and it adds up, okay? When you think that these yards are short and it's like, oh, they didn't pad their stats at all. They didn't have a good running day today. That's not necessarily true, okay? So when you look at that, it's not necessarily accurate. Look at when you add how many guys that they got playing at running back and rotating in and out, and they got a running quarterback as well. Look at the rushing yards and look at what they did on the ground. I will even pull up what the Ravens did running the ball, and I'll pull it up right here. Guys, let's just pull it up. Team stats, rushing the ball, 160 yards on the ground. That's a pretty good rushing day. Not only that, passing the ball, 331. They had 491 total yards of offense. Guys, running the ball for the Dolphins, they didn't play all that bad either on the ground. They just got outmanned that day. 154 rushing yards for the Dolphins, 221 passing yards for the Dolphins, and 375 total yards of offense for the Dolphins. Here is where the Ravens kind of dominated, though. Defensively, because the Ravens on defense slowed down their offense, and the offense only got 5 yards per play, which adds up against any other team. 5 yards per play is pretty good, but the Ravens countered that with 8.9 yards per play. First and 10, they get 8.9, almost 9 yards per play. That's 2nd and 1. 2nd and 1 if you run the ball or if you throw the ball. 2nd and 1. Then another play, 1st down. That's moving the ball consistently if you're the Ravens offense. And what they do, and this is what I've been impressed with the whole time about the Baltimore Ravens this season. Yards per play. Their yards per play is insane because they average 7 to 8 yards per play a game. A game. That is ridiculous, okay? That is ridiculous. The Dolphins they almost match that with what they do because of their offense. Their total offense for the Dolphins is insane. They have still the number 1 offense in the NFL, total offense, with the rushing offense goes to the Ravens. But if you're talking about most balanced and complete team, who's hungrier than the Ravens right now? I mean, just look at them. Who's hungrier than the Ravens right now? Let's look at I'm going to pull up some of their games. Let's pull up some of their games. This past Sunday, they beat the Dolphins, who has the number one offense in the National Football League, 56-19. They turn around on Christmas. Let's go back to Christmas. 33-19 against the number one seed in the 49ers, who have a loaded roster and one of the most complete teams in the NFL. The number one seed in the NFL, who has a bye in next week in the playoffs, beat them 33-19. Jaguars 23-17. They beat the Rams in a close one. They beat the Bengals once again 34-20. I covered that game. Seahawks 37-3. The Lions, who was a top 5 offense in the NFL, held them to 6 points. 6 points. 38-6 is what they beat them. 38-6. Let's keep going. Browns, early on in the year, they're in the playoffs, 10-5, a playoff contender. They're at the number 5 seed currently in the playoffs in the AFC. Earlier in the year, they beat them 28-3. Now the Browns got revenge on them, 33-31, November 12th. But needless to say, overall, they've been blowing out teams. I mean, they've had a few mess ups. Yeah, the Colts, they got beat by the Colts. They only had 3 losses. Colts, Browns. I think one of their losses, if I am not mistaken, one of their losses was to the Steelers October 8th, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, it's October 8th. So they only lost to the Colts, Steelers, and the Browns. But the thing is, they've already clinched their division. They're the number one team in the AFC because they're 12-3. And I'm sorry, they're 13-3. The Ravens are the hungriest team in the NFL. I'm not going to sit there and say they're the most complete team in the NFL, because I think the most complete team right now this season, just for this season at least, is the 49ers. But when you look at the most hungry team, because they already beat the most complete team, if they're the most hungry team, is you got to give it to the Baltimore Ravens. Dolphins still in it. They got a huge game Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. Not going to lie. Bills are on a tear. They're on a 4 or 5 game winning streak. This could decide the AFC East, and it will decide the AFC East. In fact, it will, because after this loss for the Dolphins, this is for the AFC East championship here, division title here. So let's just sit back and we'll watch Sunday night. Bills, Dolphins. We're going to cover that game. Josh Allen not turning the ball over as much. We're going to preview and predict that later on. But the Dolphins in a game Sunday night. So it's one of those things where this could drop them seeding-wise. Now, the Miami Dolphins are already in the playoffs, so they got nothing to worry about. But this could be a game right here that drops them from the 2nd seed to the 5th seed, or the 4th or the 5th seed, maybe. So let's just see what happens Sunday night with the Dolphins. The Dolphins tried their best, but they were outmatched by a hungry football team, and the Ravens are ready. Final score, 56-19. Ravens rout the Dolphins in a battle for the number 1 seed. The Ravens clinch the number 1 seed, and obviously the AFC North. The Dolphins are in the playoffs already, and they are fighting for the AFC East title, division title, Sunday night again in a high stakes showdown against the Buffalo Bills in Miami. So home game for the Dolphins. So let's see what happens on Sunday Night Football in the last week of the regular season here Sunday night. So Ravens are a hungry team. I hadn't seen anything like it. I hadn't seen the Ravens play like this in quite some time. So let's just see what happens with the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins coming up this weekend. Guys, that was the Week 17 recap. Let's talk about the Pigskin Frenzy NFL injury report. Let's give you updates on that. Let's talk about who's in and who's out. We're going to give you some other news before we conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy with our preview and predictions of the games that we're covering for Week 18, the last week of the regular season. I cannot believe it. Injury report. Let's kick it off with Browns wide receiver Amari Cooper. He had a heel injury, and he is questionable versus the Bengals Sunday after missing last Thursday's game versus the Jets due to that injury. So we're going to see what if Amari Cooper can go. He did miss that winning the game winner versus the Jets again, with Joe Flacco, putting on a tear. This is coming off of the heels of Amari Cooper having one of his best games in recent memory as well. So thoughts are with him, and hopefully he gets back out there soon. They're going to need him for the playoffs coming up next week. So we're going to see what happens with the Browns. Hopefully he heals up, and I would highly doubt that, in my estimate, that the Browns would probably play Amari Cooper and try to rest him for the playoffs coming up next week here in Week 18, because the Week 18 for some of these playoff teams who have already clinched a playoff berth are sitting some of their guys out. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Browns wide receiver Elijah Moore, concussion. He took a scary hit against the Jets last Thursday. He is questionable versus the Bengals. He had a concussion. He was released from the hospital last Friday. Thoughts and prayers are with Elijah Moore. Hopefully he gets back soon and he is healthy and better and well enough to play some football for the Browns. So thoughts and prayers are with him. Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence, his shoulder, he is considered day-to-day ahead of Sunday versus the Titans. Now, here's the thing. The AFC South is a little bit tricky now too, because the Texans and the Colts, both 9-7, are fighting to see who gets in and who it's a win or go home scenario for the Colts and the Titans here. Win or go home. And not only that, this could decide the AFC South on Saturday night early on. They're going to watch and see what the Jaguars do against the Titans. The Titans playing a showdown with the Jaguars. Jaguars 9-7, I believe. They're 9-7. Jaguars 9-7. And when you look at it, and when you look at the thick of things here, they were in control of the AFC South. They were like, what, 7-3, 8-3. Then they became 8-7 after losing 4 or 5 straight, 6 straight even. Excuse me. So when you look at it and when you see everything, and when you just think about it, it's crazy how the NFL works. That's all I got to say. It's crazy how the NFL works. And it's crazy that within a span of a few games, with the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of dipping a little bit in the second half of the season, the Texans and the Colts could capitalize. So this is why you do not dip and you try to work your hardest in football games, because things like this can happen. And now you're in a 3-team battle for the South, and this could affect playoffs right here. So we'll see what happens Sunday. Trevor Lawrence, they're going to try to want to get him back for Sunday versus the Titans. Jaguars wide receiver Jamal Agnew, his leg, he is out for the rest of the season after fracturing his lower leg during last week's game versus the Panthers. Thoughts and prayers are with Jamal Agnew, and hopefully he gets better and ready to go for 2024. Titans quarterback Will Levis is questionable versus the Jaguars Sunday. He left the game versus the Texans last week due to a foot injury. So he is questionable due to his foot injury. If he cannot go, we will give you updates on everything on X. So tune into X for all these updates, by the way. Ryan Tannehill will go and start if he cannot play Sunday. Titans wide receiver Colton Dowell, he tore his ACL and meniscus versus the Texans, and he is out for the rest of the season. Thoughts and prayers are with Colton Dowell after, suffering that knee injury in the third quarter versus the Texans, and hopefully he will be back and ready to go, make a speedy recovery for 2024. Patriots wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, his ankle is out for the rest of the year after being placed on IR. So hopefully he will be back for 2024 and be all healed up and ready to go for the start of next season. That's everything for the Pigskin Frenzy injury report on who's in and who could be out. We will give you updates on everything and on X, and keep up to date for everything for Pigskin Frenzy on the injury report, and keep up to date with everything on the socials, including X, for these updates. So that was the injury report. Let's talk about other news just for a tiny bit. a tiny bit. Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill, yesterday his house was on fire. Unfortunately, unfortunately, his family and Tyreek Hill himself were safe from the fire. So unfortunately, apologies and everything, and thoughts and prayers go out to Tyreek Hill and his family due to that incident. But luckily, they are safe and sound, and good on Tyreek Hill and his family for being safe and sound during that. It is tough to have something like that happen to you, and it is tough. So thoughts and prayers to Tyreek Hill and his family, and hopefully everything works out okay for them. Panthers owner, and this is kind of interesting. Panthers owner, and look at this, guys. Panthers owner, David Tepper, was in the suite during the Panthers and Jaguars game. A fan was heckling at him. He threw a drink or his drink at the Jaguars fan that was heckling them after the Panthers suffered another loss, and a devastating loss. And he wasn't happy about it. He's not been happy about the season at all, but he threw a drink at a fan. And now the NFL has investigated it, looking into it. He could face possible suspension for coming to games, and he could face a possible fine for his actions of what he did. So my honest thoughts are this. One, it's just a game. Yes, ignore the fans. They're just fans. I get you're putting in money and time and investment into your organization with the Carolina Panthers, only for them to miss the playoffs and to be 3-12, right? But when you look at the Carolina Panthers, they're a work in progress. You got to build around Bryce Young. I've said that. You have to build around Bryce Young. You got to get him a better line. You have to give him some better receivers and better weapons, not just Adam Thielen and Shark. You got to get him some better weapons around him to build around him. So my honest thoughts on that is you can't be doing that. It's not professional, and it's not a good look for your organization to be doing that and throwing drinks at fans like that. So I think the fine is acceptable. I would give him a fine. Suspension will have to, that's debatable, I think, but it depends on the games, I would think. I wouldn't say suspension because the season's about to end, and this is the Panthers' last week of the regular season and the last week before we see them until 2024. So let's just see what the Panthers do. Let's see what the league does with this, and let's just see what the Panthers do during the offseason, especially during the NFL draft, and see what they draft during in April in Green Bay. So in Detroit, technically in Detroit. So the Panthers and the NFL may suspend and give a fine to owner David Tepper after that incident with the Jaguars fan from this past Sunday in Week 17. Now, that was pretty much the other news in the NFL. Let's just preview and predict Week 18, and let's get right down to it to conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. Let's talk about it, guys. Week 18, and it is a week where people can play and people won't play. Rams are resting their starters. They're playing the 49ers. They've already clinched a playoff spot. So the Rams are starting Carson Wentz, and they're resting Matthew Stafford for the playoffs against the 49ers. Maybe not the best idea. I don't know. Maybe a good idea, but maybe not the best idea, especially since you're playing the number one seed in the AFC. But I would assume the 49ers are also resting their starters for Week 18. The Kansas City Chiefs against the Chargers are resting their starters this Sunday. Blaine Gabbert will start for them. But then you got some games in Week 18 that you look at and you're like, okay, we can't rest our starters because we're in a fight for our division and fight for playoff spots. So these games that we have here, they're not resting their starters here, I don't think, ladies and gentlemen. And these games we are covering, and these are some division titles, and these are some playoff spots and hopes in these matchups that we're covering Saturday and Sunday. 1 game Saturday, 3 games Sunday. Week 18, preview and predictions, the last weekend, the season finale of the regular season for the NFL. Let's get right down to it. It's Saturday's game, preview and predictions. Texans at Colts, both 9-7, and it is a battle for the AFC South title, could be, and it's a winner-go-home scenario. Whoever wins could go to the playoffs. Whoever loses goes home. Texans at Colts. Even though you have a winning season at 9-8, it's still there's not enough playoff spots. Win or go home. It's in Indianapolis, so keep that in mind. Home field advantage goes to the Colts. The last game the Colts and Texans played was in week 2. 31-20, the Colts defeated the Texans. So for the Texans, the key here is this. You got to slow down the run. The Colts had the 13th rushing offense. They could run the ball a little bit with and/or Jonathan Taylor and/or Zach Moss. They got 2 good backs, even though they're 13th. They're still in the top 15 in rushing offense. They're not too bad, and it brings out a balanced attack with the run with Gardner Minshew and how he's been playing here recently. So if I'm the Texans, I'm slowing down the run, because if you're the Texans, you're number 3 in rushing defense. You're top 3 in slowing down the run. So that's your forte. So I would slow down the run and make Gardner Minshew beat you out through the air and slow down the run. That's the big key for the Texans here in this football game. And if you're the Colts, Gardner Minshew he just has to have a spectacular game in this one. I think he has to play lights out. He has to play marvelous for the Texans to go home and for the Colts to win, go to 10-7, and to go to the wild card spot of the playoffs and could win the AFC South and surprise a lot of people here Saturday if the Jaguars lose their game. So Texans and Colts, who do I have winning this ball game? I think it's going to be close. I like me some Gardner Minshew. I like me the Colts, but I think CJ Stroud, what he's been doing this season and what the Colts have been doing, they've been fired up. They're ready to go. I think they can get it done on the road here, especially with CJ Stroud and the way he's been throwing the ball and lighting it up through the air. Give me the Texans winning this game, beating the Colts. Texans defeating the Colts by a score of 31-24. It's going to be a touchdown game. Texans 31, Colts 24. They win Saturday. Could win the AFC South if the Jaguars lose. Let's see if the Jaguars lose first, though. And the Texans could very well be on their way to the AFC playoffs next week. 31-24. Texans defeat the Colts 31-28. Now, Falcons at Saints. Falcons 7-9, Saints 8-8. Winner go home scenario here for the playoffs. And not only that, man, either way, if they lose the South, one of these teams could still probably make the playoffs here. So let's just see what happens. But Falcons at Saints, deciding the AFC South could be if the Buccaneers lose to the Panthers on Sunday. And this is playoff hopes right here. So Falcons defeated the Saints in week 12, 24-15, closer to Thanksgiving. And it was a surprising game for the Saints. The Saints did not expect that one. So for the Falcons, here's the big key here. You got to make Derek Carr make mistakes through the air. There's no secret that Derek Carr and the Saints have they're 12th in passing in the league. They're a top 15 passing team in the league. The Falcons, 8th in passing defense. You probably wouldn't know that about the Falcons. They're 8th. They're top 10 in slowing down the pass. You probably wouldn't believe that about the Falcons, but they are 8th in passing defense. When you look at this game, it's no secret that Derek Carr has not been the most consistent. Look at his QBR rating on ESPN right now. So when you look at it, he's not the most consistent. But when Derek Carr is on, he is on, and he can light it up through the air. So you're going to have to want to slow that down and slow down those big time passes to Chris Olave and toward Juwan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed, and just slow down the passing game and make Derek Carr make mistakes through the air. Let him turn the ball over a little bit. That's what you're going to have to do to try to isolate that and try to win this ball game, in a big way to win this ball game. So if you're the Saints, just like I mentioned earlier, try to find some more success on the ground. The Saints are 21st in running the football, and I would just try to find a way to run the football. You got the backs to do it. You got Jamal Williams. You got Alvin Kamara. Run the football a little bit more. Bring more of a balanced attack on offense to light it up and to help Derek Carr light it up through the air. And you would, if you run the ball a lot and get some more yards out of it, you could very well win this football game and could win the NFC South behind it if the Bucs lose and could go to the playoffs. Playoff hopes are still alive. Division hopes are still alive in this one. Who do I have winning this ball game? It's Falcons and Saints. Close game. I think the Saints do it, though. I think the Saints home field advantage. I think the Falcons give them a fight, but they're not strong enough, in my honest thoughts, to win this game and to overcome the New Orleans Saints right now at this point. Saints win the game. I'll give them a score of 24-17. Similar to last game, but the roles and the victors are flipped. Saints 24, Falcons 17. The Saints go to 9-8. Falcons go to 7-10 and end their season in 2024 and miss the playoffs. So Saints could very well go to the playoffs. Falcons miss the playoffs, and we will see them in 2024. 24-17, Saints roll against the Falcons. So, two more games before we conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. Rams at 49ers. Matthew Stafford not playing in this one. The last game we had was in week 2. 49ers defeated the Rams 30-23. Close ball game. Carson Wentz starting this game. I'm pretty sure the starters will be rested for the Niners. Have not been announced yet, but I'm pretty sure that it will be one of those games here. So, Rams at 49ers. The 49ers defeated the Rams in week 2. For the Rams, you got to slow down Christian McCaffrey in the running game. If he starts, this is the big key here. Slow down the running game for the 49ers. The 49ers are third in running the football. They can run it, man. They can run it. And I've seen Christian McCaffrey do it, but you got Elijah Mitchell who can also run the football. So run the football. The Rams are 12th in stopping the run. So I would slow down the run and try your best to move up a little bit in that ranking to slow down the run for the 49ers. If you're the Rams, you got to find a – if you're the Niners, you got to find a way to slow down these receivers. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, if they are playing Sunday, because there's rumors that they all could sit. Who knows? Because they're both in the playoffs, so who knows? You got to find a way to slow down these receivers. I think that if you slow them down and contain them a little bit, neutralize them a little bit, you can find a way to win this game fairly well. So who do I have winning this ball game? Honestly, Rams and Niners. I believe that the Niners could sit this game out and they could afford to take a loss since they already clinched the number 1 seed. So who do I have winning this ball game? Give me the Rams beating the Niners here. And because of the starter sitting out, I think that's what could happen, and it's what should happen since the playoffs are next week. The league already got a bye in the playoffs. You got 2 weeks, and you've already clinched the number 1 seed. Let them sit. But I think the Rams get this one done since they are sitting their starters. Rams win close, 28-24. Rams 28, 49ers 24. Rams 10-7, 49ers go to 12-5. My pick may change if the 49ers starters all play, but I'm not necessarily going to doubt. I doubt that they start, but I don't know if I'm going to change my pick here. Rams 28, 49ers 24. Rams get the win, and they move on to the playoffs next week, while the Niners move on to the playoffs and move on to the number 1 seed in 2 weeks. So, last game to conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. Bills at Dolphins, Sunday Night Football, 10-6 at Dolphins, 11-5. Battle for maybe the number 2 seed here, and for the AFC East championship division title here. So, if you're the Bills, and by the way, the Bills played the Dolphins last in week 4 and blew them out. We covered that game. I said the Dolphins were going to win that game, and I was wrong. The Bills defeated them in week 4, 48-20. And last season, the Bills won the AFC East. They have been winning the AFC East constantly ever since Tom Brady left. They're trying to go for I believe, their 3rd straight AFC East championship. So, their 3rd or 4th straight AFC East title. Bills, Dolphins, 48-20 last time they played. Bills defeated the Dolphins in week 4. Now, if you're the Bills, protect the football still. You have a mission. Keep protecting the football. Josh Allen has been doing a lot better the past few weeks in this 4-game winning stretch. in protecting the football. He is now second in turnovers. He was first. He's now second in turnovers, right behind Commanders quarterback Sam Howell. So he's second in turnovers. So find a way to protect the football if you're Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills against a very stingy Miami Dolphins defense. And if you're the Dolphins, you have the number one total offense in the league. You got to find a way to confuse this Bills defense with different looks on offense. Confuse them. Do different packages, do different looks at the receiver spots, shift a little bit, give them some different looks that make them confused in this game, and to confuse them and to burn them on defense and on offense here. So those are the keys to the game. Who do I have winning this game? It's close. I think it's going to be close. It's hard for me right now because the Dolphins are so good on offense, but it is hard for me right now to pick against the Buffalo Bills. They are on a 4-game winning stretch, and they are white hot. Because of that, I think the Bills find a way to go into Miami, upset the Dolphins, and win the AFC East once again and beat them in a close game. The Dolphins fall to the number 5 seed. The Bills go up, all the way up, clinch a playoff spot, go to the number 2 seed, and win the AFC East. The Bills win it 31-28 by a field goal. Bills 31, Dolphins 28, a lot closer than last time, but the Bills get it done in Miami and win the AFC East. I just cannot deny them this win, especially with how white hot they are. And when Josh Allen gets going, he's hard to stop. 31-28, Bills beat the Dolphins, win the AFC East, move up to the number 2 seed, and the Dolphins move down to the number 5 seed for next week. Guys, that just about does it for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some NFL coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. Just share around with others on there and follow on there as well. X, Instagram, and Facebook. All you got to do is just type in Pigskin Frenzy. Follow like the pages there. You'll get episode updates. You'll get news and highlights from across college and NFL football. Trivia question on Instagram stories. Go and answer today's NFL question. As all things up to date. And as always, all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Thursday. Go enjoy the last weekend of the regular season for the NFL before we get ready to cover some playoff games next Thursday and get right into the playoffs. We will be back Tuesday to recap the national championship game, the college football playoff national championship game between Michigan and Washington, and we will be talking and recapping the 2023 college football season and provide my final thoughts and recap of the season for college football. We will be back Tuesday. Until then, I'm Joel Norris signing off, and we will see you then. And for everybody out there, please and always stay the course.